A quick update for Serie A Awesome that has transpired since we finished recording the pod is that Weston McKennie of Juventus has tested positive for COVID-19. And it means that Juventus team have now entered into an isolation period themselves. So this is quite the news, Matteo. It's yet another player testing positive. It's Weston McKennie that we've been talking about a lot, and it's just not good news for Juventus or the league.
Yeah, and let's also look at the historical timeline when you look at last summer and post-lockdown and how few cases there were all over Serie A. This also went hand in hand with the period that Italy was having, that they had largely contained COVID-19 a lot better than now, where we're seeing this new fall wave that was expected all over the world. In the US, we're seeing it all over Europe, with some of the countries that had problems in the spring now having problems now in the fall. And we're seeing spikes in Italy with COVID cases, the most that we've seen in months. And this has also gone hand in hand with then players falling ill with the general population. And Juventus now have another case in Weston McKennie to go along with Cristiano Ronaldo, who apparently was on a plane back to Turin, where he's going to do the rest of his quarantine. But this is not good news, Kay.
No, absolutely not. And then obviously because of this, Juventus will now go into isolation themselves. So what does that mean for the weekend? What does that mean for them going forward and for the rest of the players who obviously will undergo the tests that they would anyway, right?
Yeah, well, if they're all in the same hotel, then I think they're going to carry out tests pretty regularly. Right now, I believe it was 48 hours before games, they were doing all the tests of the squad, and now they're going to see, are there any other infections? They're going to, I'm assuming, test them regularly up until this weekend to see who's fit to be on the team and who's testing negative and who has to enter a period of quarantine for nearly 2 weeks.
Yeah, so they're not allowed contact with people outside of this group, and they will, the club, be in constant contact with the health authorities in the region. As we've explained to you before, it's regionally based, which is why we heard the story that we did last week with Napoli. And there leads us to another piece of news that's actually happened since we finished recording today's pod. And it's the fact that the committee have voted on the outcome of Napoli not turning up for that game against Juventus last week. We were waiting to hear what would happen from it. And Matteo, the news is in.
The news is in, and it's not looking good for Napoli. The 3-0 forfeit loss, that's less surprising, but there is an added punishment, which is a -1 point deduction in the Serie A standings to go along with a forfeit loss. Now, this is fresh news. I just put it out on Twitter to gauge the general opinion. I wrote, how do you feel about this? And I said, is it scandalous, too harsh, just right, or too lenient? 42% say scandalous, 28% too harsh, 27% just right, and then 3% too lenient. I have a bit of a problem with this one, Kay, because I understand that you're enforcing the laws that were just created months ago for an unprecedented pandemic, for a time of uncertainty, laws that were put in place before this wave of COVID cases throughout Italy, where the situation has gotten a lot worse in most countries in the world that have been battling this pandemic since February. So I have a bit of a problem when you're being such a stickler for the rules for something that is so fresh and so new, and you're telling me you have no wiggle room for a situation that no one's ever been in. No one could have seen how this would play out for the rest of the season. And that's what's bugging me about this. I understand that you're setting a dangerous precedent if you're allowing the game to be rescheduled, because then suddenly teams that have had even more COVID cases, look at Genoa, that have to maybe play with their youth team because they've had so many senior players testing positive. Look at Inter, that have over 6 positive COVID tests now. Then they could look at Napoli and say, right, we don't want to play this weekend. Did that be scrapped? Good luck finding a time to redo it given the congested football calendar. So I understand that side of it, that they're like, right, this is going to set a dangerous precedent if local government get in the way. Who is the ruling authority? Is it Serie A? Is it the local government? Well, clearly they're not giving any breaks to Napoli. But the 1 point deduction after a 3-0 forfeit, I'm sure Napoli are going to go to court about that. I'm sure they're going to appeal, and I would be shocked if they don't get that point back. I think that is ridiculous to add that along with a 3-0 forfeit. To me, it's overly harsh, and I expect to see something done about it. But I also understand where the league is coming from, where they're saying, listen, we can't just postpone games. We agreed that if you have 13 players that are fit and ready to go, you're playing the game. And clearly, they want the season to keep going, even if there are tests and many more tests, like what we're seeing with Inter. Is it the right decision? It's too soon to tell.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.